Coffee and Conversation. We're all here. Hello. We are lucky enough to have Ginger joining us the first Wednesday of every month for Coffee and Conversation. So our next one will be October 4th. Go ahead and put that in your calendars. Yeah. We'll be here. And so will Ginger. So I'm going to turn it over to her. She doesn't even need introduction. People know her, but dear friend of Brooks, dear friend of our ministry. Apparently our husbands serve.
I know. Wednesday the 5th.
Thank you.
Already.
It's October 5th. Thank you. Do not put October 4th in your calendar. Anyway, our husbands serve on the same board. We just figured that out this morning. So small world. But she is here to talk to us about compassion. So take it away.
Thank you, Kenyon. So if I haven't met you yet, I am a seminary grad. When I was 40, I decided I had a lot of big questions and left the business world and went into seminary at St. Paul School of Theology, which is here in Kansas City, and interned in pastoral counseling at Church of the Resurrection, Leawood, and then a year at Resurrection Downtown. And in that time, I just got a lot of insight in those conversations into what people were struggling with in life and faith in, just being human. And so I felt this calling to just help make being human a little easier for people. And found that when I looked back at the teachings of Jesus, I really saw only compassion. And so I felt like, I think this is what I'm supposed to spend my days researching and teaching. And so I started a private practice in 2017 of just meeting with people that didn't have a church but wanted to talk about God or had been hurt by the church. And so I've done a lot of that over the last 5 years, and speaking to groups and doing some classes. And so it just continues to evolve. And Brooke and I have had such great faith conversations over the years of our friendship that she said, will you come speak? And so I'm going to be here every month. And what I want to do today is kind of explore what we might do in the months ahead. And with the theme that, it's really hard to be a human in 2022. We have a lot of things challenging humanity as we wake up every morning. There's something new that makes being human hard. And when I think about the earth is 16 billion years old, we're still struggling, right? We still don't understand a lot of things. And so I want this to be very conversational today. I want to hear what you think is hard about being a human in 2022, or a person of faith, or a woman, or a man, or a parent, or a grandparent, or a teacher, or a leader, a neighbor, a friend. What comes to mind when you think about, and it can be hypothetical, it doesn't have to be a personal example, but what makes being human hard in 2022 as we sit here today?
Everything?
Everything, yeah. It does feel like everything. Yeah.
I think one of the first things that comes to mind for me is just the state of our country, the way it runs, who's running it, the conversations around that, the political
divide,
and landscape, and what has become acceptable and condoned. So that's just kind of the first thing that pops in my mind.
And I was going to say politics.
Yep.
I think
That
feeling
seems
helpless
front
in
of
the
mind.
face of that, like not being able to. I think of words like power and control, and how little I have as an individual to fix anything that is pretty objectively wrong. I think, but, a lot of people don't. I guess I'm looking at you because I know you are. But the inability to really effect significant change that so desperately is needed, I think.
Yeah, like where do we start? And
Yeah.
what can I alone do?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And with that, just things out of our control.
Yeah.
Inflation and just things we see thrown at us all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Illnesses.
Yeah.
I think also, raising kids now, to me, seems more challenging than ever. I hear, my mom has said this many times, and I've heard other friends' parents say this, that, they're so relieved that they are not raising kids now, that when they look at just what it's like to be a parent and a kid, and navigating that, I think it's really hard. So as a parent, that feels heavy. And I have 11-year-old twins, and so, right now I feel like we're in somewhat of a sweet spot today. I mean, that literally just means today.
Morning.
Tomorrow, just this morning was okay, tomorrow may look very different, but anyway, I know we have some really difficult things on the horizon, and they don't have phones right now. They don't, there's just a lot that my husband and I are able to control and protect them from, and I know in the years ahead we will have less of that, and I think our world, makes those things just a little scarier.
It's scary to launch your babies out in the world when we feel like everything is a problem.
Yeah.
I would say I recently lost my husband and I both, all of our parents, and I would say in the space that myself and so many of my friends find ourselves in between raising children and aging parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
And grief in a world that is grieving, right? You have layers.
Grief on top of
grief. On top of grief. Yeah.
And having to navigate all the things that goes with each of those entities on the opposite ends of each other.
Oh, yeah. That sandwich generation idea, you're living it. Yeah. Oh, yes. Grief, I think we're not talking about enough in our society. The people that do it well, Kate Bowler, you might follow. She has a book, Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies. I used to believe. She's a Duke Divinity professor and author, and she's really mainstreaming grief and sadness, and I love her work because I think this has just been something we run from. We don't want to face grief and sadness, and she's putting it in our Instagram feed, which is really good for us, I think, to start to have these conversations. Yeah.
And some of those conversations are more difficult for some than others when relationships with your parents is complicated. Very complicated.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think we all have to kind of realize every human being is so complex and complicated. And no one really taught us how to use our brains or how to be human. We're just every day's trial and error.
Yeah, there's no manual.
There's no manual for this. I got a new car recently. They taught me more about my sound system than my brain, right? I was like, I'll never use any of this, but I'm trying to use this every day, and no one teaches me.
And there's only one manual.
Yes.
When you go to find a manual for parenting, there's way too many choices.
Exactly. I know. Yeah, we don't teach the big, vast unknown. We just kind of throw everyone out there and say, figure it out. And what else is hard about being human in 2022?
I think what you just started to say, I was telling someone this the other day, I think parenting is also really hard because there are so many self-proclaimed experts telling you to do it in so many different ways.
Exactly.
Anyone can become a mom blogger and promote yourself enough to get popular and, have no credentials and people follow. I mean, I think it's really confusing.
That whole influencer kind of thing we've created in society is such a valid point of, and we're not fact checking or credential checking or, and it's there's freedom in that, and there's a platform for people that might have been voiceless before.
Yeah.
However, there's also this new buyer beware kind of thing that we need to do some homework and be really educated about who we're following, what we're listening to. And those things become such echo chambers, right? I remember in seminary we had this professor that there was an app, I don't know if it's still around, it was called Flip Your Feed. And so you would download this app and it would, on your social media feeds, it would flip to the opposite of what you follow, the opposite kind of thinking.
Stress.
And
like melting down thinking about that.
What we all realize is how biased the people we follow, like we are only going to follow people that agree with us, right? And so I was only hearing the same message over and over again. And when we flipped it, it was like a whole new world. It was really a great thing to just kind of realize, oh, I believe in something and I'm going to follow everybody that believes that. And then we just realize that then we just become very isolated in one thought pattern, right? And then that becomes a deep belief. The more you think something, the more you believe something, the more you're inundated with it, and then you think everybody else is wrong.
That's what came to my mind is the getting so entrenched in being right and so judgmental and cruel toward others who might think differently than you, and the ease with which and how it's become acceptable to be just downright mean to others and not look back, and it just feeds on itself and then it divides further, and that feels hopeless to me. I don't see how if we're not going to be willing to flip the feed or to listen to other people or to open our minds a little bit, then it will never improve. It will only get worse and worse. And so I get despondent about that.
Right, so then we just check out.
Yeah, I think that stifles a lot of people because they're like, well, I don't want to say this in mixed company because, you know, of how I might be viewed and treated, and so I'm just going to be quiet.
Well, it's hard also. I'm not on social media. I try to avoid it because I do get on my husband's Facebook page to look at pictures of friends and whatnot, but it's sometimes hard to sort out between, is this person trying to be an influencer for gain, or are they just trying to shame everyone else who's a lesser, you know, because they're... The best example I can give is at the start of this school year, we have dear friends who have young children. Well, actually, they have a new middle schooler this year and an elementary. And she has now decided that every week she is stepping up her lunch making game and has bought special containers and is putting together a week's worth of lunches every week. And every week she literally posts a picture of the week's worth of her children's lunches. And I'm like, are you getting paid to do that? Okay, you said you bought the containers at Target. Are you getting, you know, kickback for it? It's just like, why? That has got to be shaming so many of her elementary
my Ziploc bags aren't.
I'm like, why? I just don't. I actually don't need that.
Right.
I just don't need that.
We don't need that. And I do think that's, some of you have heard me speak about self-compassion. I love that whole field of research. There's over 20 years of clinical research on the power of being kind to yourself. And I think that we need it more all the time for such a time as this, right? I can see this woman who makes lunches very important in her life, and I can release myself from that expectation, right? That's an act of self-compassion, is, Ginger, this isn't how you want to spend your time, and that isn't important to you. So we're going to release that expectation, and that's, you know, having that conversation with yourself is super important. Like,
because it can then slide into judgment.
That's right.
Yeah, so to stay in that sweet spot on the fence is really difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we, as women, we wake up every morning with a feeling of I'm not enough already. And then the first image you see is evidence that, oh, there's something else I'm not doing. Right? There's something else I'm not doing. And so that feeds our inner critic. And we have to be really intentional about doing that brain work. And this is the stuff people don't teach us about. Oh, wait, I have roommates in my brain and I don't have to listen to them. And some of them are nice, but some of them are really cruel to me. And if I wouldn't live in an apartment with these people, so why am I living in my brain with these people? right? And a quick tool to take away today is just check in with yourself of, would I say that to a friend? Would I say what I just said to myself to a friend, right? And 99.999% of the time, the answer is no. You would not say to a friend what you just said to yourself. So then be aware of, oh, that's just that mean roommate in my brain, and I'm kicking them out today. But we have to use those kind of tools and be really intentional to not get caught up in it. That's right.
I like that, roommates in my brain.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to compartmentalize
Yes,
that.
exactly. Yes, there are sweet ones and there are mean
For the
ones.
record, my husband has like bros in his friends. And they all tell him he's awesome.
Yeah, where do I get those?
Like, can we get like bros in our brain?
Invite them into your brain, Michelle.
I explained that to me. I explained it to me, and he was like, "What are you talking about?"
Right.
And I was like, "He's like, I've got like dudes in my brain that are like, you're rad, you're smart." I was like, "What?"
I love it. We need dudes in our brain, bros in our brain. I like it.
So we need to flip.
Okay.
We need to like have the
Let's do it.
like the girlfriends in our brain that
Let's do it.
are our cheerleaders.
That's right.
Because
The encouragers.
I think we all have
Yeah.
little. I'm sorry, church, but bitches in our brain. Like,
Exactly.
I mean,
We do, and they're so mean. And I think over decades, they gained
gotta
so much control.
change them.
Mean girls, they're mean girls.
Yeah, they're mean girls, and they're powerful, and we let them have control, right?
We give them their
we
power.
feed them the evidence.
Yeah.
We see all the things we do wrong. We look in the mirror and we feed that nasty roommate with the thoughts we have in our heads over how we look, and so then that inner critic gets stronger and stronger, and they're running the show, right? They're in the big bedroom with the great bathroom, and the encouragers in the basement. Like, I have something to say, right? And I think men are a little bit better than that, than us, than women at that. I think society's given men a little bit more of a free pass on criticism.
Oh, yeah.
And so they haven't fed the critic. But I love that, Michelle. Let's get the dudes in our brain. You're awesome, dude.
The gal pals. We need the gal pals.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. What else is hard about being a human?
I think for me, it's the whole technology thing. But I have a short story. We just came back from Boston, and not to go into a lot of details, we were walking down the street and a fight broke out. And so I have 8 and 11-year-old boys. And so we detoured and went another route and made it to our hotel. And as we walked in, we heard these horrific screams from outside. And so the door that we avoided going in, we look outside and one of the men is laying motionless on the ground. So my kids were standing there looking at this in shock. But it was what happened after that really got me, because people were like stepping over this man. But there was a group of teenagers videoing it and pointing and laughing.
Whoa.
And then they ran off. And all I could think is, Mr. Rogers is telling me to tell my kids to look for the helpers.
Right.
And I'm not seeing one helper that I can tell my kids,
Right.
is available to do this. I mean, luckily the bellhop was getting 911, so that helped. I mean, there was that piece. But I think about this compassion and how I feel like technology is this buffer between us and reality. And so we don't have to feel emotion to what's going on the other side of the camera. So we can record this motionless man and run away from it and live our lives.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, my 11 and 8-year-old sons are standing there witnessing this. And so it was very eye-opening. I hadn't ever experienced anything like that, especially the recording. I do not get that.
Well, and it's
do
almost
not.
like, I wonder if those kids felt like, oh, it's our lucky day. We have something amazing to post that everybody's going to notice and like,
Like the
that's really
intention
disturbing.
does not seem good to me. I do not think they were recording it to take to the police.
No.
Not
it was
while
going to be
laughing.
posted somewhere
Yeah.
for people to like and comment on,
Entertain.
and just really awful.
Did you have to have a teachable moment then with your boys?
I tried, but I needed to have it.
Yeah.
I needed to
Yeah.
understand. Like I couldn't even put my mind around it.
Desensitized.
Yes.
Well, and we're not accountable. I mean, that's what the technology does. Like you said, that buffer between reality. I just filmed it and ran away, instead of that's a fellow human and I need to help. I mean, didn't you talk about like the girl for the woman down in the road? You know, like I should do something that is not for myself. I need to help. That's a fellow person. And that technology just chops that
because
off.
I feel like we're more into things for the likes.
Right.
What the response is going to be for what we did, you know, because you can get far more likes posting something like that than you can squatting down and saying, "Sir, are you okay?"
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
Ew, wow, Kenyon, your kids will never forget that.
No,
I
and
mean,
it was scary.
Yeah.
We talked about it a lot on the trip. But yeah.
And it's so disappointing because we hold out hope that people will do the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you see that it doesn't hold up.
Is he okay, by the way? What happened to the man?
Don't know.
Was taken by ambulance?
It was coming. I mean, the bellhop called 911, but I have no idea. You know. And don't get me wrong, I understand that there's a safety issue. There was a fight that broke out. You have to make sure you're safe and you're okay. I get that. But the recording, I don't get.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Charles Darwin has writings on evolution that the continuation of the species will be the compassionate people, and that it is attractive to be kind. You actually mate with kind people. Mean people don't mate. And so Darwin had writings that said eventually humanity will be a more compassionate species. And I think
That's not gonna happen.
right. I think about what's he thinking in 2022 from the clouds above, Darwin. What like when does that happen? Because it's really interesting that he wrote on that with such hope that the arc, and the arc towards humanity. Or towards kindness will prevail. I mean, Martin Luther King spoke to us on this, right? That we have to hold on to hope. And I think that it's an interesting kind of dissonance in our brain of, I want to hold on to hope that people will always do the right thing and that compassion will prevail. And yet, we have evidence.
I do think that's possible, because what I see happening right now with things so bad is that you do hear those exceptional stories about the circumstances of today are causing those compassionate people to rise up where they may not have been compelled to action in the past. And for someone to stop and help is extraordinary, because it doesn't happen very often.
Right.
So I it's sort of like, so my son at Mizzou has a job right now, and he's working as an intern in one of the departments, and he's with a bunch of kids, and he's exceptional simply because he's showing up when he's supposed to be there on time. I mean, he could probably really mess up, and he probably is, but relative to everyone else there, it doesn't take a lot to be exceptional these days.
Right.
So, but I do see maybe
which is also
with
sad. It doesn't take a lot to be exceptional.
the lowest common denominator is pretty darn low now. So, but anyway, I do see that exceptionalism starting to rise up in the face of what we've got going on right now.
Yeah, so there's this, I hold on to this notion that the space shuttle reverberates the most right before it breaks through the sound barrier, right? And so I hold on to that. Like, maybe this is the reverberation before the breakthrough. And yet the question becomes, how long do we shake, right? And what's it going to take to get to the breakthrough? And I think we're just alive at a really interesting period of time, and our children are growing up at a really interesting time in the timeline of humanity. We're but a blip, but this blip, it has a lot of little fires burning everywhere. And so then you wonder, what's it going to take to evolve? Technology, one of the things in neuroscience that's being studied is that technology evolved at warp speed. Our brain evolves very slowly, right? We are still, the reptilian part of our brain still thinks that a bear could be looming around the corner, right? Like, our brain hasn't evolved enough to say there's no bears in the building. My fight or flight response when I hear a noise, my reptilian brain still goes to, is a bear, right? So I haven't evolved beyond caveman days very far, and that's why we live in so much fear, because we have all these threats now, all these things are in front of us, and our brain is still thinking there's a bear that's going to attack me any moment. So no wonder anxiety is at an all-time high, medication use is an all-time high, coping substances are being used at an all-time high. Like, part of this is just we're trying to be human, and it's really hard to be human because the world's evolving so much faster than our bodies and our brains are.
But unfortunately, that bear is not a bear, it's an active shooter.
Exactly.
In my world.
Exactly.
The kids of Uvalde returned to school today, and my heart is with those kids.
Are you a
and
teacher?
Teachers.
Yeah.
And they're at a new building though, right? But I guess they've got like an 8-foot wall, steel wall around their school, and how can these kids feel safe?
Such a visual
How
reminder.
can we feel safe? I go to the movies and look for an exit and think, okay, what would I do if there were an active shooter?
Yeah.
And I don't like thinking that way,
But fear is one of the most powerful motivators for lots of ill.
That's right.
That's what's being used against us right now.
Exactly.
Everything is coming at us from a point of fear.
That's right.
And the more they can stir that fear, then the crazier we get.
Right. And as people of faith, as followers of Jesus, who said, do not be afraid, it's almost like we just brush that away, right? Like, yeah, don't be afraid. Yeah, right. Because our nervous systems are so inundated with fear that the alarms are sounding constantly in our neurological system. And so we don't even know where to start to not be afraid.
And then with kids, how do they function? How are those kids returning to school?
Yeah, it is so hard to be a kid right now. So as people of faith, what do you think is the hardest in this environment, in this climate we've described? What's the hardest thing to hang on to in your faith? What element of faith, or what makes it hard to be a person of faith with all of this happening? Yes. We have a thought. I love it.
So Zach's sermon this week, it really actually frustrated me a lot because I liked his message, but dang it, he didn't have enough answers for me because he was saying God, and I've heard this many times before, God doesn't orchestrate or desire our suffering.
Yeah.
Then why is it happening so much? And he's there in the suffering. God is with you, and I don't, it's not that I don't believe that, but how, I'm asking like I'm my 7-year-old daughter, then how does he allow these injustices, these innocent babies to get shot in a school? And it's happening with increased frequency, and every time you turn on the news, there are more and more shocking things that aren't even shocking anymore. And how God's not okay with that. So as a person of faith, I'm going, okay, then there must be a lesson in that. I think Zach's slide said, somebody help me out, it was like, learn our lessons.
Feel the feelings.
Learn the lessons.
Let go of the heaviness.
Okay. And I can learn the lessons.
Let go of the heaviness was the lesson.
And I can
thought it was really good.
sort of let go of the heaviness. And I can feel the feelings. But that didn't get me all the way to, so why, how is all of this just getting, I think probably people have said this throughout time, but it's getting worse and worse with every year and more. And like you said, the technology is exponentially advancing, and we can't keep up with it. And data shows more school shootings. So
the question you want answered is, where is God in this?
Yeah.
How is God allowing all of this to happen? Yeah.
Or where are God's people? Like, what can the believers do? Like, if we need more mental health services, which we do, then, and things are being done, and progress is being made, but not enough, and it's too late.
Yeah. So those of you that also heard the sermon, what did you take away from it? Will you share? You said you liked it.
I did.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of sermons about why bad things happen to good people,
Right.
and that kind of stuff, and I felt like he addressed that pretty well. That bad things do happen, and we need to get in there and gain something from the moment, get some perspective, and hopefully, work to turn things around. And that, things are going to happen. These bad things are going to happen, but that's not the end.
Yeah.
It's not where we leave it. We need to push on with God by our side. And that was, to me, the hopeful piece of what he was saying.
So our response is faith and not fear.
Yeah.
Because we are then tasked as being the ones to go forward.
Right.
And unless we take our faith forward and just stay back in fear, they've won.
That's right.
In essence.
Right.
Now, easier said than done, but yeah, we're the ones that have to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And when I get super overwhelmed and people ask me, like, where do we start? I come back to that. If we each can be a energy of love, right? I'm going to be kind to everybody I encounter. I'm going to be a light in the world. I am going to control my fear and my anger and I'm going to try to just bring joy to the planet. Then maybe there's a ripple effect. If 100 of us are doing that, and then those people are touched, and then 1,000, and then, because otherwise I don't know what we can do, right? That's the only thing I think that we can contribute is our own, what we emit. And if we are each emitting love, and that looks different for each of us. For some of us, that's action. For some of us, that's peace and calm. For some of us, that's a smile to the people you encounter in an intersection. That's going to look different for each of us, what you emit. But if we're each just trying to emit good things, I think about at the end of a day, sometimes I'm like, everyone I encounter is just in a bad mood today. Everybody's just cranky. And then I realize, oh, that was me, right? I was the cranky one all day. I was emitting frustration, and then it was being received. I was receiving it back. But you have a good day, and you're like, it's such a glorious day. Everybody's so happy, and I just encountered the nicest people today. And then I realized, oh, I woke up in a good place today, and I wasn't in my worst energy, right? And so, I think we each have the kind of responsibility to experiment with that a little bit every day of like, if the whole day seems off, maybe that was me. And so
I feel like it's like exercise.
Yeah.
We have to be intentional about it some days more than others.
Yeah.
And if we can get the gumption up to do it in a bad situation, it is so much better and easier.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we don't get ourselves there every day.
Right.
So we have to be intentional.
Right.
And that's what prayer helps with, and meditation, and those things.
I think we each, as humans, kind of have to find our recipe of like what helps me be my best self. For some of us, it's a walk. For some of us, it's exercise. For some of us, it's a nap. For some, it's healthy food. For some, it's time with a pet on your lap, right? Or playing with a child, or FaceTiming a parent. We all have a different recipe, but we all kind of need to know what are my ingredients so that I am emitting love and good things. And then my responsibility is to follow that recipe, right? And I think that's when the phrases like do the work, everyone needs to do their work and do the inner work, and all of those get tossed around. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. It's what helps you feel calm and loving and achieve a sense of inner peace so that you can emit that to somebody else. And then maybe that's the ripple effect. I don't know what else in our lifetime to do, except that gives us a good day and maybe gives somebody else a good day. And I think the good days link together and it's a good week, and then we have a good month. And then the people we're encountering seem happy. The people we live with seem a little bit happier and less burdened. And, because it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. And the question is a good one. Where is God in this? And that's an age-old question now, right? That is, since every human being has had that question of whatever the crisis du jour was through the ages. And I think that that's what religion has tried to do, is figure that out, right? And it's all a best guess. Every sacred text was a human best guess at what they interpreted God was saying to them, or how they received the download, or and if you look at, I love studying other religions just to try to understand humanity a little bit, but all of our spiritual leaders took a different approach, right? Moses took a rules approach. You have the 10 Commandments, you follow these, life as a human is good. All right? And Jesus said, just love and stop judging. And if you do that, life is good. Buddha said, empty yourself, right? Get rid of your ego. See yourself as connected with every other human being. Live from a place of compassion and non-judgment. Then life will be good. Muhammad, in the 700s, the founder of Islam, he was in a cave. He was an illiterate man, got a download from God that said, the Jewish people have missed the point, the Christian people have really missed the point, and nobody's being loving. They've got all these rules and regulations and rituals, and nobody's being loving. And that was the foundation of Islam. And so we have all of these, hundreds of years, there's kind of a pattern of about every 500 years, and we're kind of up for it right now, because the Protestant Reformation was 500 years ago, so that we kind of have a new voice. But they're all saying the same thing, and it's all elements of the same thing, right? Which is do your individual work and treat other people really well. I mean, that's what Jesus was saying. That's what all of our spiritual leaders are saying. And I really think it comes down to all of us doing that, and that's maybe where we start to, as people of faith, are the hands and feet of God, right? But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to hold on to a sense of faith and not have answers. That's what faith is.
I think in this political climate too, it is so very difficult to face many things with that attitude. But what I find is when we do, because we've all taken a corner pretty much, when we do approach it that way, it can open up the dialogue that is so extraordinarily important between those of us who do not see the same. So,
And I think you mentioned earlier the kind of meanness is acceptable. That has shut down the conversation, sadly. And I think for those of us that can have the courage and the bravery and the kindness, we have to open up those conversations and hold space for it, right? We have to be the ones at the women's group dinner that holds space for people to disagree and hold space for differing opinions. And that's our role as people who are seeking out. I mean, we all showed up this morning because we're trying to do the work. And so as women who are trying to do the work, I think holding space for those kinds of conversations, modeling it, is part of our job.
It's a goal.
It's a goal. It's a goal. Yeah. So when you think about, because I want to, in the months ahead, things that I've thought about kind of discussing and sharing some research and some tools with you and some really practical things you can take away each Wednesday, first Wednesday, is here are some things that came to mind, like finding balance in life, juggling all the things that are important to you, your people, your dreams, your projects, your desires, your responsibilities. So finding balance in that, quieting a worried brain. I talk with people a lot about that. Finding a sense of purpose, meaning. What am I here to do? Why am I here for such a time as this? And really feeling clear on that, on what your purpose is. How to cultivate a deep sense of faith in the middle of a dumpster fire. Right? Like what are my little threads of hope that I always can return to? Trusting and believing in yourself. Forming deeper relationships with people in my life. Deeper connections. There's an art and a science to that. There's some really good research on friendships and relationships. What else comes to mind that any of that you would like to expand on, or more that you think we could use this time, an hour once a month, I'll bring you some research and some tools, and then you can share with each other. We can learn from each other. What topics are of interest to you? What's worth coming to hear about or talk about?
I think all of those sound you've got a really good list started.
We're a very needy group.
Yeah.
That should get us through February.
Okay. Did you count for me?
Yes.
Perfect. You are not a needy group. You are a very highly intellectual, loving group. And I have thought that every time I was at Village. And when Brooke asked me to do this, it was, you know Brooke and texting. We could do like one-word text back and forth. So she said, first Wednesday, VP, hour. And I was like, yep. So that's because you're such an incredible group of women. I love it every time we're together. And I just feel like these are the people to spend our time with, and that together we find some answers and a way forward, and we encourage each other, and we feel less alone in the world. We find our people. Yeah.
I was just gonna, just in looking around at this group, I love the fact that there seems to be a variety of ages and women, and I think that that's an important aspect to dwell into more, because I've been where some of you young moms have been. Sometimes I think I'm still there and realize I'm not. I'm much older, but it's just, I think we can learn so much from, and that used to be part of our culture, where you did learn from other generations, and just knowing how to move forward into the next generation. And there's not always a whole lot of information when you transition into another part of your life, and and people are so separate and isolated these days. And I like the fact that we have a lot of different age groups here, and we can learn from each other and help each other out. And so
I love that. I think we might orient the room even so we're all looking at each other next time, because I think there's power in what you're saying of learning from each other and modeling to each other and giving each other hope. I really think, if as churches are struggling with attendance and people are not coming back after COVID, all my pastor friends from seminary are all struggling with the same things. I think that's part of what church provides, is that we come together physically and we mentor each other and we offer hope, right? It's just a dose of hope. And I think we could be that to each other in this group. And I love that intergenerational and appreciating each other instead of discounting or writing off or diminishing. Instead, you hold the wisdom I seek. Tell me more. Right?
There's a reason they call it a sanctuary.
Yes, a sanctuary. Exactly. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, what else comes to mind? This is your time to design. I really want to make it something you want it to be.
I'm intrigued with the art of connecting.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially following the pandemic, where we really got used to not connecting.
Yes. Exactly.
And left a hole.
Yes. Yes.
So filling that up again.
Yes. And one of the things, as a teaser for that I've been reading some research on, is how in a suicidal brain, you're very convinced you're the only one, right? And you're very much alone, very isolating. And so as people who have lived through a pandemic in our nation, in our globe, in our world, we had to isolate. Well, our brains grabbed onto that as it's not safe to go anywhere, and you have to protect yourself. And we really have some interesting brain thinking going on around isolation, even like gravitating toward it, because our amygdala, that fear center in your brain, feels safer if you just stay in bed all day, right? The amygdala's job is to keep you safe. So it's like, hey, I get an easy day if you just stay in bed and don't go do anything, right? So let's do that. So it'll scare you to not go out in the world because its job is easier, right? The amygdala it gets a day off. And so our amygdala has really grasped this opportunity to keep us safe by saying nobody is safe. And what that's doing in the suicide research is just perpetuating what we knew to be true, that the suicidal brain says, I'm the only one suffering from this. Nobody else understands my pain. I'm the problem. I'm the burden, right? It's a very isolated language. And so part of the mental health world's initiative is to teach more connection, and you're not alone. And one of the things to take away today is 7 million people on this planet right now feel exactly the way I do. Probably 70 million, right? They are struggling with whatever I'm struggling with. And they are, 70 million people have also lost parents recently. And you just work with your own brain to say, you know what, this is really hard. What I'm going through is hard. I also acknowledge all the other beautiful human beings struggling with the same thing. And that is just enough to give our brain a less alone feeling. And that's all we need to start to come out of some of that depressive rut that our brain takes us to. Is, yes, this is hard I am struggling deeply. I'm deeply hurt. I'm deeply grieving. And there's a woman in Africa who feels the exact same way I do, and a woman in India, and a woman in China, and a woman in Russia. And she's getting up this morning wondering if she's going to make it just like I am. And that practice is enough to help pull our brain into a little bit more connection. But I'll share some more on that. There's some really beautiful work going on in that lane. It's really important to teach our kids too.
I was going to say, the connection with your kids, like you with your kids, and then also them connecting with other people. Like, I didn't grow up with a phone attached to my hip, and I had to have conversations with people. You don't have to anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. You can, I mean, like, I saw a group of teenagers, and they're all sitting there like this. And I'm like, look up and talk to each other. Yeah, that's hard, and it might cause anxiety, but you're going to make a way better connection, and you don't have to hide behind. Yeah. And how do we do that in this climate?
Exactly.
Because it's not being taught.
No, it's not. Yeah. The what a friend really means, right? And what a connection really is. Yeah, that's gotten hijacked a little bit, that language. Yeah.
But then just wait till they go off to college, and then they're not on their phones as much and with their friends, and you can never get them to respond. So there's never a happy medium.
Yes, so there's that. So as we close our time today, I think I would like for you to just spend, this month just kind of thinking about the elements in your life of being a human being today. Teilhard, I always say this first time right. Teilhard de Chardin, who was a French Jesuit priest, also a geologist, which I love Chardin because he was a scientist and a spiritual teacher. But he has you've probably seen it in memes of a quote that is, "You are not a human being seeking a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience." And I think that, I came across Chardin's work when I was in seminary, and it just spoke to me so much of, what if that's the core of our identity? What if I am a spiritual being here on this planet? I call it human school, right, or earth school. I'm here just learning what it means to be human, but my true identity, my essence, the core of who I am, is a spiritual being. I'm a soul. And you are too, and you are too, and you are too. And every single human being is a soul in a body. And if we can root ourselves in that identity, then it becomes, how do I manage this human existence, right? I have my health, and I have to feed my spirit, and I have my friends and my people to take care of, and I have my job and my volunteer work and the things I want to learn and the dreams I have, and I have stuff I got to deal with, a house and a car and money, and you know, those are just realities of being human, but that's not the essence of who you are. And so maybe this month, just see if you could really ground yourself in, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. Being human is very challenging right now. But if we anchor into, you are a soul and I am a soul, and you are a soul and you are a beautiful soul, and see each other that way, and help our children see each other that way, it makes being human a little bit easier. Yeah. Thank you for your time this morning. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think this will be great. You're a lovely, lovely group of people. I'm excited to come back in October.
October 5th.
Research on the power of play.
A little bit, yes.
I think we need more play.
Yes.
Our souls need to play.
They do. Joy and play. You know, it's interesting because some of this stuff I've read, and I love inner child work, right? Where we're caring for the child, or we're reparenting the child that we were, and we're healing some wounds. The other side of that work is the inner child wants to play. Right, that's a little girl who wanted to do cartwheels in the yard and you know, make a wreath of daisies and play. Where'd she go? And she wants to paint, and it doesn't have to turn out great. And you know, and so that is such an interesting thing that I'm seeing more of, because we've spent a lot of time in psychology on the inner child, the wounds of the inner child. Now we also have to address, oh, there's a little child in there that wants to have fun again.
Yeah, our world is very cerebral.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your homework. Go out and play.
Yeah. Well, this lady celebrates Trash Truck Day.
Do you?
That is play.
Yes, he has a t-shirt. I had a t-shirt made. It says Trash Truck Day. It's my favorite.
What day of the week is Trash
Fridays.
Friday, okay. We'll think of him.
That came about because he was more excited that it was Trash Truck Day than he was that it was Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Mom, it's Trash
it was
Truck
big. Well, that merits a t-shirt. So
does he watch the truck when it comes and he's front and center?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
that's
you
awesome.
if they can, they
to
go
the
out. Yeah, they take a Gatorade out to the man. Sometimes he toots the horn. Oh, wow.
This is how we change the world.
Yes. Exactly.
This is how we celebrate Trash Day.
He took his chainsaw in to meet Mr. Dennis at the food pantry yesterday. He's got in the car. He said, "Mr. Dennis is nice." I said, "I know he is." He had his chainsaw and his safety goggles, and his, you know, I mean, yeah, we bring joy to it. We went to Lowe's. You think bringing joy to Lowe's? I mean,
That's awesome.
a little boy with a chainsaw and a hard hat and his safety goggles and gloves. Every single person at Lowe's was like, "Yes!"
I love it. There's our image.
She has a lot of
There's our
stories.
image. You all are wonderful and lovely, and thank you for coming this morning.
Encouraging.